Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
Yeah, all right. We've just had 2 episodes with guests, and we're trying to stay disciplined with our format of having our own episode now because the viewers miss just having us too.
No
So
question about it.
how we usually do it, I'm going to give you a theme or a topic, and you're going to run with it, and then I'll start asking some questions and give my 2 cents, and we'll see how it goes. So tonight's topic is perspective through travel. What do you think?
Yeah, which I thought was a great idea on your part. You're always good at the coming up with the topics, and especially as often as we talk about perspective. When you mention that, I'm thinking, one of my beliefs is one of the best ways to obtain perspective is through travel. I always say reading, conversation with other people, which is why free speech is so important, and especially when you disagree. And travel are the ways that I believe are the best ways to gain perspective. So when you brought up the topic, I really liked it. And then I also decided to move down into my basement here for a different background to really get behind the travel idea here. I got to tell you, it's a tricky one for me though, because it's like a lot of things. Well, I didn't know that travel would give me perspective until I started traveling. And then I realized, wow, I'm looking at the world and people and cultures and in a whole different way, than I used to. And I had the privilege of traveling through work for a while at one point. Even though I was working a lot, or was supposed to be, I guess, I really did get to see most of the United States, mostly the bigger cities, but a lot of the United States through that. And that really did change how I looked at my life, other people, just so many topics. And then, as I traveled quite a bit of the world over the last 7, 8 years or 9 years now, I guess. And that has just helped and take it to a different level because, you're in countries where they don't speak English. You're talking to people just come from an entirely different background, and whether it's Mexico, Canadians are similar, at least from where we live, in a lot of ways to us, but that's perspective as well. But I was just in Prague and East Germany, or East, I should say Berlin, East and West Berlin, which it's not, we don't have the Iron Curtain anymore, but thankfully, or at least to the same degree, things like that it'll just blow your mind and how to look at the world. So I said at the beginning, conversation with people, reading, and travel is obviously the most expensive one, but it definitely has influenced me in a way that it's like one of those things where you can't go back once you've experienced it, and it just changed my viewpoint. We can get in some of the details, but before we do, what about you? You've done a lot of travel this summer already, but I know you've done a lot of travel, period. So how do you look at it?
Yeah, I'm a little different. Besides Canada, the only other country I've been to is Iceland, and that was fun because it never got dark, so I didn't sleep much, and I got sick when I got home, and played golf at midnight, all that stuff. But I'm lucky because with my daughters, with their college softball, Allie has 1 year left. Just this year, I've been to 37 of the 50 states just this year. Now I might count traveling through at a Love's truck stop and getting gas, but I haven't been to Alaska, Hawaii, and the Texas, like west of Florida Panhandle. But what blows my mind is how big our country is. And I have the 4-hour flight from Toronto to Iceland, and I have yet to be anywhere else in the world. But it blows my mind even more how big the rest of the world must be. And think about how we can get anywhere in a couple hours. And I feel like that's why we get so caught up in our own little world, because between social media and the ease of a couple flights somewhere, we can be anywhere else. But the reason I keep saying how big the world is, even though I kind of contradict myself and say how small it is with technology and travel.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
When I just completed our cross country trip to California and up to Seattle and then back home, we drove it. And that blows my mind how it's just highway and rolling hills and town and then city and then little area and farm. There's a lot of land out there. And everywhere I went, whether it's an urban area, a rural area, or even when I was overseas in Iceland, when you talk to people, that's why I'm glad you said conversation. I make it a point. I don't talk politics with people because I know that's not going to be a fun conversation. Like, I don't even care if they're right and I'm wrong. It's not going to be a fun conversation. But I go places and I always ask the server, what's the popular dish? I don't even order off the menu. Oh, what's the IPA everybody drinks? And then, oh, where should we go next? And we don't even have an itinerary. Just by these conversations, you start immersing yourself in the culture. And we always make friends if we're there a couple days. And it's made me realize perspective through travel is how much in common we all have with anybody we meet in person. So that's what with this big rant of mine, that's what I was trying to get. When you stop watching the TV and you stop on the social media and you just out there meeting people, you realize we have so much in common.
It's crazy, isn't it? I'm glad you said it, because to me, it's the biggest thing as well. These stupid things with the social media and all the hate and fighting and nonsense that goes on. And then you go to that town and you run into that same person, and that's the person who says, our local dish is a fried pickles and you got to go have a beer over here and welcome to town. And nobody cares about politics there. Nobody cares about, I mean, when you're face to face, it's a whole different world, and it just opens your eyes, the culture and such, but the people, right? And the one thing that whether I've been in Toronto or Puerto Vallarta or Prague or Berlin or Paris or London or on and on and on and on and on, they're all people. They're all people, and they all like to talk and enjoy other people and conversations, and like to brag about where they're from and what's cool there, and have stories to tell. And everyone wants to connect, right? I mean, really connect. Not this BS, but real connection. And that's one of the things that is so powerful. But the problem, as you kind of pointed out before, is it's so easy to pick up your phone or get on your computer and you think you can be anywhere because, hey, look, I'll go on YouTube and look at Ireland, or I can travel that way. And I'm not saying there's not some value there, because I think there is, but it's a whole different ball game to immerse yourself in those cultures and enjoy what they have to offer and talk about what goes on there and the things that people fear and people love, and how they, one of the reasons I like travel internationally, I like to hear the perspective on America and what people think about the country and us as Americans, and some of which are, I think, spot on, and some of which are just hilarious, and you're thinking, where does that come from? But at the same time, I also love to travel to Texas. I love Austin, and I love I love a lot of places, New York City, and I love Tampa, and I love, there's tons of places in the United States that are just fun to visit, and there's different cultures there, right? If you're in Portland, Oregon, a place that I've been a few times that is beautiful, I'm sure a lot like Seattle, it's a little different there than it is in Portland, Maine, right? Which is also beautiful, which is definitely different from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or Alabama or Mississippi, and some of those areas. But it's easy to sit back, right, and create opinions and have our prejudices, and never have interacted and never been anywhere. And then when you, this is my opinion, my experience. And then when I go, I realize so often how wrong I am. And I try to remember that, because if I'm wrong with that, if I'm wrong when I was in, I was in Austria, earlier in this year. If I'm wrong about the people there, what else am I wrong about? Right? A lot. So it gives me perspective from that standpoint as well. But it's life changing, and I tell people all the time: you want to change your life, you want to see the world around you in a very different way. Travel. Now, at the same time, I also say save your money and invest in income producing assets so that someday you can really travel, really do what but so there's a balance there. But I want my daughter to invest in income producing assets, but she also travels. She and her fiance a lot. They like to travel, and I love that too, because I know she's a better human because of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was great stuff. And you brought up a good point that, well, basically where you live and your environment can really shape how you grow up and a lot of your thoughts and beliefs. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we drove through Cody, Wyoming, and they have a rodeo that night. So we bought tickets, and I'm watching 9 and 10-year-olds compete in some of the events. And I'm joking with my wife. I'm like, well, that's their travel softball out here, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, the competitive spirit was the same. They grew up with those animals and with those events and with those rodeos. I'm not saying they don't have softball in Wyoming. I don't mean
Of course,
that.
yeah.
But that's what a lot of the kids go do, and that's what you're brought up doing. And I don't like to bring politics into it so much, but with all the parts of the country I've been to, it blows my mind when I see a politician get on TV and tell us they know what's right for all of America. Because the people in Seattle need something different from New York, but they're both urban areas, so they need something different from us, and they certainly need something different from Cody, Wyoming, and likewise. And it just blows my mind. Because of social media, nobody wants to stand out too much, so they try all this one size fits all things. And it makes me wonder sometimes how much the politicians have traveled. I mean, traveled, not like gone in with bodyguards and a motorcade and said, oh, this is great. Look at me. Everybody's taking care of me. I'm talking just going somewhere and nobody knowing who you are. And environment, there's such rich environments in this country that are so different, yet the people still all want to connect.
Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's like, people are just they're different in a beautiful way, right? I mean, different to me, different's good. I like different. You and I aren't the same, and we grew up in this same area. People from all over, they're different. That's a beautiful thing, and I love that. I love that, and that's something you get to experience through travel. But yeah, to the politics side of it, yeah, it's a bit insulting, for any of us to think, let alone the leaders, I use that in quotes, to think that, there's a one size fits all solution for any of us, especially in a country as big as the United States, right? And in fact, it wasn't my first, but one of the first international trips my wife and I went on, we went to Italy and shortly into Switzerland, and we were with a group. And one of the things that was interesting, I think there were 40 or 42 people in the group, and maybe only 6 of us were from the United States. So everyone else was from all over the world: Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, England, Ireland, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I forget, but all over the world. And one of the things that was interesting, though, is every one of them said, do you guys travel internationally a lot? And we said, no, not really. This is kind of a real first. It was a big trip for us. So this is our real big first one for us. And they said, oh, and I said, what about you guys? And everyone there traveled. They're just, I live in Germany, but I've been to Ireland and England and France and, in Austria and Czech Republic and blah, blah, blah. And it was crazy how much they traveled internationally. But then when I really started to think about it, I thought, my gosh, Ireland's I don't know, Ireland's the size of Indiana or something. I mean, so they've got to travel internationally in order to really travel around. To your point earlier, our country is so large. There's so much land out there, as you put it. There's so much there that it feels different because we're all Americans, which is a wonderful thing, and we're all part of the same tribe in some sense, a group, whatever people want to call it. But it is so big and so broad, and the difference between Cody, Wyoming, which I haven't been to, and New York City, which I have, I'm sure they're worlds apart within the same country. And one of the things that I tell people all the time who go to me, well, I can't afford to travel internationally. I say, travel the United States. It is. There's nothing wrong with that. You're going to get a tremendous perspective, therefore a tremendous education, and therefore a different way of viewing how you see the world traveling in the United States.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, Europe tried to unite for the purpose of economic reasons, and they can't do it. And it's kind of funny to think we've been able to for so long, but unless you've traveled to different states, you really can't embrace how different everybody is, or different areas. There's so many rich regions, and it's really cool. But the ironic thing is, another part of the perspective, when you're on any interstate in America, you get off the exit and you see the same truck stops, you see the Subways, the Pizza Huts, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, and it just blows my mind. That really is American.
Yeah, it is. Our way of doing things is, at the same time, you see all those in Berlin and a lot of the big Dublin and some of the big city. Heck, I went to the Azores, a little island group off in between the United States and Portugal. It's a little island group out there, beautiful place. And there was it was tiny. There was a Subway on the Azores. Totally different menu, but there was one there. But with that said, with what we're talking about in general here with travel, I think the important part is you got to get out and talk to people and see people and see how other people live, right? If I'm from the big city and I've never been to a tiny little town in Wyoming or Rhode Island or pick a state, it doesn't matter. And I don't see what those people go through and how they live their lives. It's a bit, I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't know how you can, I know how you can have an opinion because I did it my whole life too. But now that once I started traveling, I started to really try to think, I don't know what I think I know. And just like growing up in a small town, essentially, when I go to a bigger city and I look at just traffic issues and housing issues and, cost of rent but you work here, but what's rent cost and some of these other issues that I never even gave a thought to because it didn't work in my world. It opens your eyes, and anything that opens your eyes and makes you see just through a different lens at times helps you learn and helps you understand. And it may not necessarily even change your opinion, but it certainly makes you go, oh yeah, I can see that. I don't necessarily have to agree with where you're coming from there or but at least I have some perspective now. And that's what this is conversations about and why I push people all the time to travel. And people are scared to travel, which I understand. I used to be scared to travel too. And my mother-in-law, for instance, was scared to travel. And she heard this, she'd be horrified if I said she's in her mid 50s, but she went with us on a trip this year to Europe, and now she's talking about going on a trip to Peru by herself to hike. I mean, we went from here to I'll never travel internet. It's scary. I don't know what I'm getting into to hey, I'm going to Peru and I'm gonna spend 8 or 9 days there and not shower and eat. I mean, a whole cool like trip lined up. It's not like she's gonna be by herself, but a whole cool, really neat trip, but going by herself, not with us or anything like that. And it just, that one trip with us just opened up the world to her. And now her perspective has just, Paul, it's just, it couldn't be different now. And how cool is that?
I think it's incredible. And that's the next point. Anything in life, whether it's travel or a job or political belief, if you haven't experienced the opposite, or at least had anything to compare your experience to, how do you even know you have the right perspective to begin with? It's impossible. And, I'm terrible because anytime I travel somewhere, that's the next place I want to live. But I'm not working. You know what I mean? I haven't lived through the winter there, or vice versa, the summer there.
Right.
I don't even look up what tax law is, or what anything I can do, or what property even is. But I
That's
have
a
more
common thing.
Yeah, I have more emails from realtors, because when I'm in a city, I'm like, oh, I'm going to look up some real estate, and then I put my email, and I'm getting all these updates on places, and that's okay, but that's, to me, that's the only way to live, is go experience, and oh, that's great while I'm there. I want to live there, and then maybe I never go back, but I never would have even have seen that place.
Yeah,
And,
no,
and one quick thing about perspective, it makes me realize I get furious at all the people I know in the area we live in that knock this area, that it's terrible, it snows, and the taxes. I've been all over the place, and this place is
beautiful.
gorgeous. If you have the right means, and you have the right purpose and meaning, I would have a hard time leaving our area in the summer after everywhere I've been.
I'll tell you, I have the same like pet peeve about it. All these people, and I'm sure everyone listening, wherever they're from, everyone bangs on their area. It's like what you do. I don't care where you're from. It's like, oh, our area stinks. It's terrible. Our area, like you said, is beautiful. But when I realized how great it was? When I started leaving to travel, and I'd come back and I'd go, I remember flying in sometimes to our little airport here and go, oh my God. And I'd be driving through our beautiful hills and green and lush and all the lakes. And I'm going, what the heck's wrong with me? This is unbelievable. It's one of truly, and I'm not exaggerating, nicest places in the world I've ever been. And we have long winters and some of those things. And some people love that. I don't, but some people love it. But until I left, I didn't have any perspective, right? To your point. But I do crack up because of the amount of people who they'll travel one place. I know our area is notorious for people going to Myrtle Beach, and these people come back and go, oh, I wish I could live in Myrtle Beach. I wish I could live in Myrtle Beach. And I go, first of all, have you ever been anywhere else other than here in Myrtle Beach? Generally, no. Okay, that's strike one. Strike two is, when you were in Myrtle Beach, were you working? Just to your point, what did you do? Oh, we hung out at, we went on the ocean, we went fishing, we did this, we did that, we did. Yeah. It's like, that's not how you live your life. That's you don't have the right perspective. But it's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah, believe it or not, you'd get tired of doing that stuff every day, even if that's what you got to do down there.
100%.
Quick story. The first time I went to Reno, I have family out in Reno, and we were driving up to Virginia City, the old, and I couldn't escape it. There was all this Mark Twain stuff in Virginia City. I'm like, are you kidding me? Mark Twain's from our area, but it was funny, the big signs. But we had to stop because these wild horses were crossing the road.
Wow.
And so I'm on Google looking, what's the population of wild horses? What states are they in? And how many deaths a year? Because, I thought hitting a deer or something, in the Northeast, you've got moose, or Yellowstone, you got elk and bear. Here you have wild horses. And my uncle was laughing because they see them all the time. So the entire rest of the trip, oh, look, cows. Oh, sorry, there's a fence around them, so you don't care about them. Oh, look at more horses. Oh, they're enclosed. They're the domesticated horses. And something they completely took for granted. He's just picking on me because I'm like, oh, wow, there's no fence around them, same horses. And, they take for granted all the barren, beautiful landscape with snow-capped mountains, and then they come here and admire all our greenery. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That means there's gnats and humidity, so it just depends where you're from, but it makes you appreciate, even if it's not your hometown, it just makes you appreciate a lot more about where you've been and where you might want to go, right?
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, and I think this is ultimately what we want to talk about to some degree is, how does it make you a better entrepreneur, business person, teacher, husband, father, whatever the case may be? You know what I mean? How have you found that change you, like real to you?
Well, that's a good point, because we traveled a ton, even when my kids were in high school with the travel softball, and we got in trouble with one team because we made it too much like a vacation to go see monuments or historical markers and see the city. And we left that team, because that's the whole point of the travel. That's like that's why you go places, to experience it, not to just go play another game on a field. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? As an educator, it makes me realize, I don't want to say how lucky I have it with what I do and where I teach. I mean, a lot of that's the choices I've made. But when I'm in a city and I see the makeup of those schools, I know it would be different. So I appreciate what I do. Now, that being said, there's a lot more opportunity in the bigger urban areas for the stuff we do, like rotations and whatnot.
Right.
And, as a teacher, I like traveling because I think 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds need to hear these stories. So maybe it lights a fire that they want to get out and do something too. They don't need the know-it-all teacher that has every opinion about everything, and I'm right and you're wrong, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong, and I've never been anywhere. I'm rambling a little bit, but
No, I like that. It's important.
I think traveling creates stories, and stories and experiences how you ultimately teach. How's that for something simple?
Yeah, that's interesting. I love what you said about.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I love what you said about the softball team and that you left the team because of that. That is awesome. I mean, that says so much about you and of course your wife. I'm sure was part of that decision as well. And your kids, your daughters. I don't know what the ins and outs of it, because I've never heard that story before, but the fact that you guys decided that team wasn't for you because of that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I mean, why would you? Anyways, let me ask you, as a business owner, how's the traveling? Well, being a business owner has helped you pay for the traveling. I guess there's one perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point. It has. It's allowed me to pay for it, and it's also allowed me to do it on my terms, not when I've acquired X amount of vacation time or PTO or whatever it's called, not based on anyone else's schedule other than my own, right? Or my family's, my wife.
If I can interrupt, it's very inconvenient when I'm scheduling you to come in and talk to my students, and all of a sudden you tell me tomorrow you're leaving for out of country. We need to mesh that a little more, but go ahead.
Yeah, and it's also given me the ability to do it at a moment's notice, which has been wonderful. But more importantly, it's a couple things. Number one, I've noticed, I feel, from what I've witnessed in conversations I've had with people in other countries, we are in a country where taking control of your life and doing things like starting your own business and trying to better yourself, I think is looked at a little different than a lot of other cultures. This is just my personal opinion from my experience, and again, conversations I've had. I'll never forget. Let me give you an example. One trip we had was to Ireland, and we had a guide, and his name was Tig. He was an awesome guide, and we had him for about a week, and so he was with us all the time. And he asked me what I did, common question, what do you do for a living? And I told him, entrepreneur, and what we own this and that and whatever, that kind of stuff. And he said, oh my God, that's unbelievable. That's very rare here in this country. That's just not, it's not really the ethos of the community, of the culture in a lot of ways. I said, "Oh, that's interesting," and we were talking about it. He said, there's a joke here we tell in Ireland, and I actually heard the joke when I was in England too, a couple of years later. So it must be, maybe it's a United Kingdom thing, I don't know, but it gave me a perspective. And the joke went something like this: in the a kid witnesses someone driving in a limousine up to their mansion day in and day out, right? They're getting driven up to their mansion, and I'm short version of this, but in the United States, the kid looks up at that mansion, that person going up who's obviously made it, and they're wealthy, and they're living what is perceived to be a wonderful life. In the United States, this was their joke. You guys say, "I can't wait to be that guy someday." In Ireland or England, which I've heard the story in both, the joke goes something like, "Wow, that guy's really rich. I can't wait to get that guy someday." There's a jealousy there. But it's very classy, class systems in a lot of ways, and there's a variety of reasons for that. They were telling me, and those types of things. But I look at it like we have a freedom here in our country that I don't take for granted as much. I still probably do, but I don't think I take for granted as much, because when I'm traveling and I'm hearing these stories and people are going, "Holy cow," that's not something I would even ever be able to comprehend doing here. Or when I was in Berlin, and you're in West Berlin and East Berlin, and we had guides there, and you're hearing the guides, and you're standing at the Berlin Wall, and you're getting stories from your guides on what it was like in East Germany, and what it was like when we were in Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic, I'm sorry, in Prague, what it was like in the way they were governed, and even the culture there of stay in your place, stay in your lane, this is who you are. And in the United States, I would like to believe, although sometimes I get frustrated by it, that we're a culture of, you can be anything you want. It's going to take your hard work. And when people succeed, we tend to root for them. We want to see those people succeed. We want to see people take a chance and go for it and win and all those kinds of things. And I don't see that to the same degree in a lot of other cultures. Now, they also have wonderful things, but that's one perspective I've gained from my travel, is I feel like our culture is a little bit more go for it, and I'm a go for it guy, so I like that.
Isn't it a shame how many people don't even know to take our freedom don't even know to be able to use our freedom to better themselves? They just get bogged down in their life. And I think it goes back to the beginning of the podcast. A lot of it's just the perspective from not traveling. They might even, and I'm going to ask you a question to end up with, to end this in a minute, but if people travel a little, they might even realize, wow, I didn't realize you could even do that for a living.
Yeah.
Or you might meet somebody that says, do this with me.
That I was going to meet something. What I find, and I'm glad you said that, is I meet people and they've got these amazing stories, and I have a chance to talk to them, and I just realize they're just regular people like you and me and everybody else I know. There's very few special people out there, and I mean that in a good way. There's not that many Elon Musks or just special, whoever your special person is. I don't care. There's very few just can't miss people. It's usually just people who are normal people who put one foot in front of the other, day in and day out, come to whatever challenges they face, because we all have them, some more than others, but we all have them, and they just keep going. And that's one thing that I've just taken from my travels and the people. It's usually comes down to people, the people I meet. They're just people they're just going at it, just like I have to. And that inspires me.
Now, it's really cool. So I want to ask you a question to end. So, for the 18, 25-year-old that, whether or not they have a lot of money, or whether or not they have a lot of vacation time, or whether or not they have anybody to even travel with, how would you, if someone's like, oh, this is great, but I just can't do this right now, what do you recommend? How small do you start, or what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would, first thing I would say is you want to travel because you will be better off for it, and
Make it a priority.
make it a priority. And that's exactly where I was going with that is don't give up your goal of creating income producing assets. This would be my advice. You need to do that. Okay. You need to travel. Okay. Now you got people going, oh, great. So now I got to save money to travel and save money to buy income producing assets. What am I going to give up? Well, I'll tell you what you're going to give up. You're going to give up your crap, your motorcycle and and not everyone has these things, but everyone has waste. Okay. You're inefficient waste. So I want you to cut that out. I live in a smaller apartment. Don't get the new iPhone. Have a smaller TV. Don't have TV at all, like I did for years. Cut out cable TV at all. That might seem easy now, but it wasn't when it was the only option. That cut out your Hulus and your Netflix and all that stuff. That's where your money should be. You should use that money for your income producing assets and your travel, and also your free time when you're not working. You should be investing that into things that can create leverage so you can get income producing assets or travel. It's not spent it's not spent consuming. Stop consuming your free time and start investing it. I'm going to say it again. Stop consuming your free time and start investing it. So there are the trade-offs. We got to make trades everywhere, right? Obviously, we talk about it all the time. Stop trading for crap and start trading for things that are going to benefit you in the long run. Income producing assets or things that can help you create more income so you can buy those income producing assets, and travel. And maybe it's a day trip. Maybe it's a weekend. Start small. We've all got places we can go. Maybe you live in the city. Go out to some rural area for a night, or a weekend, or maybe vice versa. Experience different things. Stop in that diner on the side of the road, or that hole in the wall, or whatever it might be, and have some conversations and talk to those people. Every trip doesn't have to be 12 days in Europe, right? Or cross country in the United States. Those aren't normal things. Those aren't things that I would expect anybody to do on a regular basis. But getting out there and seeing different things, even within, heck, you can go 4 hours away, right? And be back in the same day if you wanted to make the long trip. From where we are, we can get to basically Pittsburgh, Cleveland, New York, Toronto, Philly, Baltimore, all within a 5.5 hour drive. There's a lot in between there, so, and they all have something different to offer. So my guess would be to do it, skimp elsewhere. And that elsewhere are the things that are costing you money that don't produce anything.
And the intangibles are, you just never know who you might meet or what might inspire you, and that's priceless.
Priceless. Totally agree.
All right, Matt. Hey, love these conversations. I appreciate it.
Me too. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. See ya.
See ya.